Bhagavad Gita is a book of mankind's collected experience of and answers to life's most basic questions. Who I am, from where do I come, what is my purpose and destiny, and most practically, how do I find happiness? These podcasts originate in the lectures of Neil Bhatt, a disciple of Swami Chinmayananda. They are presented here in 20 to 30-minute segments, each covering 3 of the Gita's 701 verses. Welcome to Gita Wisdom for Daily Living.
So we had been discussing chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga, Yoga of Divine Glories. So we have seen in the beginning, Bhagavan said, I am the source of all things and everything proceeds from me, and therefore Arjuna, just focus your mind on me. But Arjuna, like all of us, says, that's not really as easy for me to focus. So give me something which I can focus my mind on, something which I can tangibly feel that you are there, and then I can focus on it. So he asks, Bhagavan Keshu Keshu Cha Bhavesu Chintyosi Bhagavan Maya. In what different forms, O Lord, I can think about you? Because focusing on God without a form is not possible for most of us. So Bhagavan gave Arjuna various examples from Arjuna's world. So we are also trying to find Bhagavan in our world. We know Bhagavan is there. We have come to the conclusion, at least by our own discrimination, that if there is a creation, there has to be a creator. We also come to the conclusion that if there is a creator needs to know. Even a simple thing we make, it requires some knowledge for me to make it. So we have come to the conclusion there got to be a creator who is the creator of this universe. And not only he created the universe, but he is maintaining it. Because he is not only the creator, but he is also the lawgiver in this universe. And if he is a lawgiver, then laws need to be implemented. So if there are laws, but there are no implementation, the laws are of no value. But we see in this universe, from our own observations, the laws are implicitly followed. The laws of nature have no exceptions. The law of gravity, Newton found out, but law existed since the universe started. So law of gravity does not make any exception, whether you are a good person or a bad person. If I jump out of third floor window, law of gravity does not make any exception. Then Neil, you are a good guy, and therefore you are accepted from there. Mother Earth will receive me exactly as Newton predicted. So we know that there are laws in nature, laws are followed in nature, and therefore there is also a law enforcer. So the law enforcer is also Lord himself, because there is no other than him when he created the universe. He created this universe out of his own self, and then he remained as the law enforcer. So he remained outside of the universe, but also within the universe. And that's the conundrum. We can figure it out. Laws are followed, that means he is there. If I'm driving on 95 at 85 miles an hour, and suddenly I see the cars ahead of me are gradually slowing down, I'll come to the conclusion there got to be a cop ahead of me. Therefore, people are now behaving at 70 miles an hour. So when the laws are followed, that implies the law enforcer is performing his duty. So God has created the universe, he is maintaining it, he is the lawgiver, law enforcer. He is all in one. But I just cannot find him. Therefore Arjuna says, in what different forms can I think about you? So Bhagavan has given several examples and said, it may be easier for you if you can find the best among each category, something which is excellent, then it will be easier to notice the strength of that entity. That strength comes from me because I am the source of all things and beings. Whenever you see excellence, you may find my presence and worship me. And then he gives several examples from the Vedic period, from Puranic period, and now he comes down to few very odd examples which we don't find them to be very appropriate when we think about Bhagavan as just a divine being. Dyutam chalayatam asmi. I am gambling among all the fraudulent acts. We don't consider gambling as something divine. We can even imagine that Bhagwan is present in casinos. If I want to meditate, I can go to the casino and sit down there and start meditating. Because Bhagwan is here, let me meditate here. Bhagwan said, I am in gambling. It's not that that environment is conducive to recognize Bhagwan. But Bhagwan wants to make sure that we don't make that mistake, that Bhagwan is limited to good things only. The things which we see in this world is evil, that also is empowered by Bhagwan only. You put gas in the car, and the car either drives perfectly in a very disciplined manner on highway, or drives in an erratic manner and meets an accident. It all depends on the driver. Nothing to do with the gas in the car. But without that gas in the car was not enabled to move. I may be the best driver, but there is no gas in my car. Nothing happens. It is what kind of a driver I am makes that car behave the way I as the driver make it behave. So Bhagavan said, even in the acts which seem to be negative, they are also enabled by me alone. So he said, Dyutam chalayatam asmi. Among the fraudulent acts, I'm gambling. That's something we don't think about it. But the gambling is one of the acts of fraudulent behavior. You can cheat somebody by writing a false check, or you can give imitation jewelry, telling them it's the real jewelry. There are all kinds of cheating in this world. And gambling is known for cheating, but it is legal. Gambling is legal in most countries, right from the Mahabharata's time. In fact, it was required that a king, if challenged by another king to play this game of dice, he cannot refuse, otherwise he is not according to his Kshatriya Dharma. So Dyutam is a legalized gambling. So this is something paramount among all the means of cheating. So therefore he said, Dyutam is the most refined art of cheating. He said, Dyutam chalayatam asmi. Cheating in gambling also requires some intelligence. Satranj was pretty much like a game of chess. So the kings were playing the Satranj. That requires intelligence. Even to cheat somebody, you require some intelligence. The intellect is nothing but the byproduct of consciousness. You can only intelligently cheat somebody if you're conscious. A dead person cannot cheat anybody. So therefore Bhagavan said, Dyutam chalayatam asmi. I am gambling among all the acts of fraudulent behavior. Tejaha tejasvinamaham. Then he completely changes and says, I am splendor in splendid. Anything which is brilliant. The brilliance in that brilliant is because of me. So sometimes you see a person as a hero looks very brilliant. That brilliance is nothing but the representation of that person's health, his mental makeup, his attitude, all that makes him tejasvi, as we call it in our language. So that tejas comes from the source of his being, which is the consciousness. A dead body cannot be tejasvi. Only a living person can be tejasvi, can be brilliant. That tejas in anything comes from me. Even that act of cheating, that intellect which enables person to cheat also comes from me. Therefore, remember all those jewel thief movies, at least in my generation, we loved all those jewel thief movies, Because that jewel thief has to really use his very sharp intellect. And he's always the hero in the movie. Because he is the one who has all these techniques and tactics, and he's going to dodge all the security system. Well, that requires intense thinking. Bhagavan says that comes from me. Jayaha asmi, Vyasaya asmi. I am the victory. When you win something, it shows that you have put your efforts correctly. It shows that you have applied yourself in a correct field. That planning and that strength came from you identifying with your consciousness. Therefore, Jaya Hasmi. So anytime you win, you know that you identified with yourself. And therefore you won that battle. You won that game. Vyavasaya asmi. I'm also the effort you put in any transaction. Vyavasaya we typically in Gujarati and Hindi is called your profession. Aapka vyavasay kya hai? The profession. Profession is something where I put my effort. That vyavasaya is only possible because I'm conscious. That conscious is nothing but manifestation of Ishvara. Therefore, Bhagavan said, Vyavasaya asmi. Sattvam sattvavatam aham. I am good, or the sattva in sattvic. Something which we consider sattvic, something which is really good. That goodness comes from, Bhagavan said, identification with that source. When something which is behaving according to its own dharma, then it is sattvic. Fruit, when it is fresh, without any contamination, is sattvic. That goodness comes from nature. Contamination comes from outside. Goodness comes from nature in that fruit. So Bhagavan says that goodness in that fruit is because of me, because I pervade this nature. Contamination is the act of my doing something wrong against the dharma of nature, using pesticides on fruits. Goodness comes from me. Vrishninam Vasudevo Asmi. Among Vrishnis and Vasudeva. Now he is just giving his identity. Bhagavan Krishna was the descendant of Yadu Vams. King Yadu had a son named Vrishni and all his descendants were Vrishnis. Among Vrishnis, Vasudev was Krishna's father. Because he was Vasudev's son, he was called Vasudeva. So there is an extra I in it. Vasudeva Sutam Devam. It's not Vasudeva Sutam. Vasudeva Sutam. Krishna is called Vasudeva. Among Vrishnis, who is the most illustrious and splendid and glorious? Krishna himself. Also, there is another reason. I think there was a question why Krishna is pounding his chest here, promoting Vyasa himself here, or making Arjuna feel he's so important. Because the next verse says, Pandavanam Dhananjaya. Among Pandava, I'm Dhananjay. I am Arjuna, yourself. Arjuna was called Dhananjay because he acquired the wealth of many kings and used them for better purposes, for Loka Kalyan. Therefore, he was called Dhananjaya. So, Dhananjay, among Pandava, I'm you. Among Vrishni, I'm Vasudeva. Basically, to make it a point that don't forget you, yourself and myself. We are part of that same manifestation. Oh, Arjuna, you are also the example of the manifestation of the supreme reality. So I am. Therefore, you say, among Vrishnis and Vasudeva and among Pandava Dhananjaya. You and I are also part of the same manifestation. And therefore, you should not forget yourself when you are looking for God. Muninam api aham Vyasaha. Among Muni, I am Vyasa Muni. So Muni is the one who directs his gaze towards his own self and realizes his own self. And then he comes out and explains that reality to people outside, and the people in the society, for their betterment. And there are various ways people have done it. So in Upanishad, there is one way. Upanishads are in a dialogue form between a student and a teacher. Only student who is interested will go there to the teacher and teacher will teach him. Then there are sutras, like Bhagavan Ved Vyasa wrote the Brahma Sutra. Brahma Sutra is to reconcile the apparent differences among Upanishads. Because you need to read one Upanishad says something, another Upanishad will say slightly differently, and you get confused. Which one is right? So Bhagavan Ved Vyasa wrote Brahma Sutra, which is in a very short sentences, like packed with meanings. You really have to be an expert in Vedanta to know that. So that's one other way of explaining the knowledge which is realized by a Muni. But Bhagavan Ved Vyasa had a very different method. He explained everything in detail so that any layman can understand it. Therefore, he wrote all the Puranas and Mahabharata. Vyasa, literally, Swamiji's footnote said, Vyasanath Vyasaha, one who elaborates, one who explains. Upanishads are limited to few people who are interested in knowing the reality. Brahma Sutras are for the scholars who understand the meaning packed into those little formulas, sutras. But Puranas, you and I can read and understand. They give you examples from day-to-day life to understand this fundamental truth that only one reality exists, everything else is the emergent reality from the same reality, and which is temporary, perishable. But the substratum fundamental reality is imperishable, ever existing. Among all these people, I'm Ved Vyasa, because he reached out to many, many, many people, not just a limited group of people. And then Kavinam Usinam Kavim. Among the seers, Kavis were the seers, as we discussed. Kavi in our vernacular language is a poet. And that also kind of appropriate. Kavi, the poet, sees things which we normally do not say. We are walking around in a garden, see flowers, but oh, that's good looking flowers. Kavi may find some very different meaning in it and start writing a poetry on it. He sees clouds and he sees something else. So he sees meaning beyond which is apparent in our observation. Therefore, Kavi is poet. The seers who have seen the reality intuitively, they did not logically come to the deduction that that must be the reality like we do. Intuitively, they have known the reality and then explained to people. So, Kavinam Usinam Kavim. Anandagiri, who wrote Tika on Shankaracharya's Bhashyas, in I think 12th century or so, he mentions Usina Kavi as Sukracharya. Sukracharya was Daitya's teacher. Therefore, Bali Raja's teacher was Sukracharya. And he was very knowledgeable. It is believed that he knew the art of bringing dead to life. And he taught that to Asuras, and therefore Asuras were so powerful. Because they die in the battlefield and they will bring them back into life again. So their army was very indestructible. So Bhagavan said he was best among the Kavim because he knew the reality. He knew the truth. Dando Damayatam Asmi. Dama is control in Sanskrit. So to cloud control, what police does in India? Lathi charge. Lathi charge is the most common means of controlling crowd in India. I don't know what they do here. They tear gas. Lathi means danda. If you want to control someone else, danda. So therefore, even all the gundas carry lathi in Hindi movies. So danda is an instrument of controlling others, the most effective instrument. Other instrument may require some special acquisition. Danda is available everywhere. Wherever there is a tree, you can create a danda out of it. Danda is the most common means to control someone else. That's all basically this verse is trying to do. We can elaborate on that it's a scepter in a hand of a king and that has more power. In our vernacular languages, if you're penalized for some crime, it's also called danda. Penalty is basically danda. So therefore Bhagavan said, Dando Damayatam Asmi. Among the controllers, I'm danda. Nitihi Asmi Jigishatam. And those who want victory in whatever they are doing, I'm Niti. So Niti here we loosely translate as strategy. To win something, I need to have strategy. But this Niti, we know in Sanskrit means righteous method in performing anything. The Niti is following your dharma according to your duties, according to your nature is Niti. So if I want to win in life, I have to act strategically, which requires intelligence, but I also have to remember my dharma, who I am and what is my duty. If I'm acting as a father, if I want to be successful as a father, I need to know what is my dharma as a father. So Bhagavan said the Niti is a strategy within your dharma. And then you can achieve victory. So for those who are desirous of victory, I'm Niti. Maunam cha eva asmi guhyanam. And among all secrets, I'm silence. It's quite obvious. If you don't want to reveal the secret, don't tell anybody. But there is also a very interesting explanation I read, which says that in nature, everything has sound, because nature is nothing but vibrations. This matter is nothing but vibrations. Now physics is revealing how the atom works. how even at the minutest level, what they call it, the strings work, even though nobody knows whether strings exist or not, but they are vibrations. Where there is vibration, there is sound. So there is nature, there is no silence. Everything vibrates in nature, there is no silence, there is sound. Always something going on in nature. But in Brahman, there is no vibration because he is motionless. He is all-pervading, immovable. There is no place to vibrate. Brahman is without any sound. And therefore, there is nothing but silence. So, the silence you only experience when you identify with your consciousness. Everything else in this world, including my body, my mind, my intellect, has noise, sound, vibrations. And the greatest secret is, what is my true self? What is my consciousness? That secret is because of that silence. So Bhagavan said, among secrets, I am silence. Gnanam gnanavatam aham. I have knowledge among the knowers. So to know something, there are three things required. The knower, the object of knowledge, and knowledge. There are three things required. So in normal case, there are two things. Subject, which is knowing. I as the knower is the subject. And the object of my knowledge is outside in the world. And the process of me knowing the object gives me knowledge. But in case of my self-knowledge, this knower and known becomes one. So the knower becomes the known when I realize my own self. That's why it's a praptasya prapti. It is something that you already have, I'll achieve when I find it. Key is in my pocket, I'm looking all over the place. As soon as I realize the key is in my pocket, I don't want to do anything. I know where the key is. I always had it. I do not have to put any effort to find it. The self, I'm seeking everywhere. Self is the Bhagavan, which has all the power. I want to see if I can find him and get his blessings to get what I want. Bhagavan said it's within you. If then knowledge takes place, the knower and the known becomes one and the same. That knowledge, the gnanam gnanavatam, that knowledge I am, is the Supreme Self in the people who know. They realize themselves. We'll stop right here. If you find this podcast helpful, please support it by donating any amount by going to the episode's website at neilbhatt.podbean.com or at chinmayarichmond.org. Thank you. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhaved. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.